Hi guys. Right, my intention on the weekend is to play a game of On Guard. Now, I'd heard about this game before, and basically it's one of those games where it's a sort of model versus model skirmish game. So it's not like things like Baron's War and Pikeman's Lament and The Men Who Would Be King and all those kind of things where you've got unit versus unit. It's a little bit more like Dead Man's Hand, where it's single models and they are combating each other. So I thought this is perfect to use the bloody miniatures range with. I've got quite a few of these bloody miniatures now, and basically I've been painting them up over a while, and I'm going to use them in this single model skirmish game because I think these will be perfect for it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through the rules, just talk through the rules and give you a little bit of a flavour. Now, I haven't seen any battle reports about this at all online. No one seems to be playing it at all, and so I thought I'd give it a little go. But I thought first thing I'd do is have a quick rules review, just to let you know what's going on in the game, basically, so I'm not kind of explaining myself all the way through Saturday's game. So Saturday or Sunday. So what do you need? Basically, it's you need about 20 odd models. They say 20 a side in a warband. So you make up a warband. So it's just a collection of individuals. I would not play with 20 a side to begin with. It seems like it's fairly complicated in terms of the rule system for 20 a side. I'd probably start with 5 or so to begin with. So essentially your models are ranked. So rank 1 is green, rank 2 are basic foot soldiers, rank 3 are veterans, rank 4 are elite, and rank 5 are generals and leaders. You can only have one rank 5 in a warband. 50% must be rank 1, and then you have combinations of rank 2, 3 and 4, okay, within any combination of your warband. Okay, so let's take a look at the basic rules. So the turn sequence, priority phase, move phase, combat phase, end phase is pretty straightforward. What happens is in the move phase you roll for initiative, really straightforward again, usual way you play most of these games. In the move phase, which is the first phase, you can do one of several things. You can either move, which means you can either run a short distance, or you can do a normal move or a short move. And depending on what you are, if you're infantry, cavalry, or whatever, it depends on how far you can move. You can use a missile weapon, remove a reload counter, mount or dismount, hide or rest, aim, issue an order, or take a special action. So missile weapons, things like bows or even muskets and pistols, they can be used in the move phase. Okay, so it's an action in the move phase, but muskets and pistols, they gain a reload counter once they've been used, so you can only use them pretty much once every 2 phases. Okay, once every 2 turns, because you can remove a reload counter in your move phase. When you move, there's 3 different types of moving. There's a run, a normal move, and a short move. A short move, if you take a short move, you can also do one of the actions in the move phase. So for example, you could reload your musket and move, or you could move and reload your musket, or you can move and aim, or move and issue an order. Okay, so that kind of makes it a little bit more flexible for one of your models. Now, when you determine priority, when you roll initiative, essentially you're moving one model at a time. So the person who wins priority chooses a model to move, and model acts first, and then the other person chooses a model to move, and so on until all the models have acted. And it's pretty much the same in the combat phase as well. So it's a combination of movement and action all the way through. A normal move means you can just move. A run move means you can run a further distance, but you cannot pass within 1 inch of an enemy. So you can't run up to somebody and hit them in the combat phase. You can only move into base contact with someone with a normal move. You can move 180 degrees in any direction at any stage of your movement. So it's a fairly flexible game in that sense. So in terms of tactical, okay, the short movement combined with one of those actions, I think makes it fairly tactical in terms of what's happening. So that is the move phase. There's also rules for jumping and climbing, but also falling as well. Okay, and you also make dexterity checks. So certain types of terrain, rolling 2d6 and adding your initiative. See if you make a dexterity check. This is if you're climbing a wall. So you can climb walls, make a dexterity check to climb the wall, otherwise you might fall. You can jump a short distance. You can jump 1 inch between, if you say you're jumping across a little brook. 2 inches if you make a dexterity check. Okay, 2d6 plus your initiative. Okay. So basically you got to beat 8 or greater to make a dexterity check. So there's this idea that individual models are all kind of acting on their own with initiative within the game itself. So it's a little bit like Middle-earth strategy battle games as well, in that, you know, you can move, you can jump, you can climb, etc. So how do you shoot? So shooting is one of the things you can do. So combat is seems fairly straightforward in this. There's a lot of modifiers though. So shooting procedure: you shoot, you add, you roll 2d6, you add the shoot characteristic of the weapon, then you add plus and minus modifiers depending on range and if you aimed when you're in the move phase, and then you get a hit score, and you subtract 6 from the 2d6 plus modifiers. And you get a hit score. If the hit score is 1 or more, it's scored a hit. If it's 0, it's missed. Okay, and that becomes a basic wound. When you've got a basic wound score, you add weapon modifiers, you subtract the target's armor rating, and that gives you the final wound score. And then you go to something called the final wound table, which kind of determines what your wound is. So a wound of 1 is stunned, a wound of 2 to 3 is light wound, and a 6 will kill you. Okay, so 6 is a kill in this game. So, you know, you're talking, say you roll 2d6, say you roll 12, say you got +1 for aiming, and then -6, shooting someone in no armour, that's a 6, so they're dead. So I think this is quite a deadly game in that sense. Now, when I was reading through this and thinking about it, I thought, have I got to keep track of all these different modifiers all of the time? So, you know, if somebody gets stunned and then a light wound and grievous wound, have I got to keep adding all these up? That's going to get really, really complicated. But it's actually a lot simpler than that, because when someone is stunned, if they get stunned again, basically it becomes a light wound. Okay? But sorry, 3 stuns become a light wound. If you get 2 light wounds, it becomes grievous, and so on and so on. So you're only keeping track of one of these. So I'm going to need counters for stunned, light wound, grievous wound, not critical wound, because critical wound is death. So I'm going to need 3 different counters to mark what wound status a particular model is. So that's actually not too bad. Okay, so that's what happens if you're shot. Okay, so these are the special orders and the combat phase. So in order to initiate combat, you need to move into base contact with someone else, and that means you're engaged. Okay, in order to make an attack, you have to go through the combat procedure. Now all characters have they've all got combat pools. They've got so many points in their combat pool, and that is divided up by you in combat between attack and defense counters. Okay, so basically militiaman has only got one in their combat pool, so they can only ever use it in a turn to either attack or defend. A leader, a general, has got 5 in their combat pool, so they can use a combination of attack or defense. You could put them all in attack if you wanted to, or put them all in defense, but you want to mix it between it, because the turn is several rounds of combat if you're face to face, if you're engaged. And so the way it works is basically you hide your combat pool to begin with, and then you reveal it, showing which ones you've decided to put on attack and defense. Then you roll initiative, okay, adding initiative characteristics. and basically you roll for priority again. So the person who wins priority chooses which of their models is going to fight first, and then the person that they're fighting against fights back. Okay, within that particular combat. So say you've got two guys fighting each other. That combat will be resolved before any other combat. So it moves around the table, each combat being resolved in turn. Okay. So the person with priority wins. They can choose to attack, or they can choose not to attack. In which case, the person who lost priority might choose to attack, and the player with priority might then choose to defend. So how does it work? So basically, you divide up your pool, your combat pool, into attack and defense. When you attack, you spend one of your points. So you need tokens for attack and defense. So you can have 3 tokens for attack and 2 tokens for defense, for example. All right. The attacker rolls 2d6 and adds a fight characteristic. I'll show you the stats in a moment. Everybody's got a fight characteristic. It could be 1, 2, 3 is really high in this. Okay, and then any modifiers for the weapon they're using as well. Defender rolls a d6 and adds their fight characteristic, and then defense modifiers, and this is the defense score. Okay, defense score comes away from the attack score. So if we were to just play that out a little bit with dice, okay, so I'm the attacker, okay, and I roll 7, okay, say I've got an attack characteristic of 2, that makes 9, alright, say I'm the defender, I roll a 4, and I've got an attack characteristic of 1, that's a 5, okay, so that 9 is now reduced to a 4, okay, a 4. So my attack score, my hit score, okay, is the attack score minus the defense score. So the hit score is 4, which is really high. Now 4, going back to the wound table again, all right, that is minus the armor value, the armor rating of the defender. So if you're playing kind of English Civil War characters, armor ratings aren't going to be very high because not many of them are in cuirassiers. Okay, mostly they'll be in. They might be in something like a, thick leather jerkin, which is probably armor rating 1. So let's say the defender is armor rating 1. That becomes a 3. Okay, once it becomes a 3, we look on the wound table again. Back to the wound table. It's a 3. It's a light wound. Okay. So it can be quite deadly. So, basically the attacker, that's the way in which you attack. Now, the defender, what the defender does is they spend one of their defense points, their defense tokens, to use a ploy to defend. So, the defender could say, well, the attacker says, I'm using an attack token, I'm going to attack. And the defender says, well, I'm going to use a defense token in order to defend. I'm going to parry the attack. Okay, so a parry of the attack is an extra defense dice, is extra d6. So let's go back to the attacker. He got a 4, didn't he? His final score was a 4. Now if the defender had decided to parry, the defender uses one of his defense tokens as an extra d6 to defend. 3. So now instead of a 4, that attack has gone down to a 1. Okay, so by parrying with his sword or whatever, it's just gone down to a stun rather than a it was a 4, wasn't it? Yeah, that was nasty. So it's gone down from a grievous wound to a simple stun. Okay, so parrying was a really good idea. So I think the idea of the game then is that what you should be doing is using your defense tokens to do as many different kind of ploys, defensive ploys as you can. And the way it works is that it goes backwards and forwards. The attacker uses a token to attack, the defender uses a token to defend, or they might opt to not use a token to defend and then they get to attack, so they use a token to attack. Okay, it depends how many tokens they've got. If they've only got 1 token, they can only attack or defend once. Okay, all right. So It all depends on the amount of tokens you've got. So it's kind of like you've got to kind of make a decision when you're going to use your tokens and whether you're going to use them in attack or defense. And basically the combat goes backwards and forwards until everybody's spent their tokens, and once everybody's spent their tokens, the combat is over, and it's potentially one of the two models could be dead. Now you can have more than 2 models fighting each other. You can have a maximum of 4 models around one model, so one model could be fighting 4 other models. Now that might sound quite brutal, but you know, if you've got a general with 5 combat point markers, then they might actually be able to defend against 4 militiamen who've got 1 each, because they've only got 4 actions, whereas the general's got 5 actions. So he could be using a defense and attacking. If you do a mighty blow, for example, you get to roll 2d6. Okay. Sorry, if you do a mighty blow, you remove an extra attack from the combat. Oh, you roll an extra die, right? So instead of 2 die, you get 3 die to attack, 3 dice. So that's even more deadly. That's huge, isn't it? I mean, look at that. That's 9, that's 12, and then say the guy, you know, even defends, that's 12. You know, say we've got +1 for a weapon or fighting ability, 12, that's 13, and then he puts a token in defense. We've got +1 as well, so that's 9, so that's 4. Okay, armor value of 1 goes down to 3. So even using a defense die, it's still 3, and I think 3 was a grievous wound. Okay, so it's quite a deadly combat. So the way I foresee it is, unless if you're not using your defense points adequately or properly, then you're going to get killed fairly quickly. So that is basically the combat procedure. So it's about movement, actions, combat, and using the ploys in defense as well as attack. Okay, and that is pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. So, you know, the wound table is quite deadly, so I'm going to need tokens for that as a combat example here. And then morale, there's different, basically you roll morale if 25% of the starting warband has been suffered a critical wound, in other words they're dead. Okay, the leader of the warband has had a critical wound, or the warband is currently wavering. So morale can basically see them off the table. And then we get into arms and armor. So different weapons have different modifiers as well. So for example, you know, if you use a matchlock musket, a musket or a pistol, you're getting more on the wounds. So matchlock is +2 on the wound score, but it's inaccurate, which means it's -1 to shoot, and it also gets a reload marker once it's shot. So you need to spend an action in the move turn reloading. Okay, so there's a variety of different weapons. Now the period for this is pretty much the pike and shot period. I think anywhere from you know, the mid 16th century, so the 1550s, the Renaissance, all the way up to the late 17th century, when you know, we're getting much more into we're getting kind of beyond the pike and shot period a little bit there. So one thing I liked about it is that there's basically lots of rules for different types of warbands. So you've got your base profiles there, but you can also have Landsknechts, okay, as you can see there. So a warband of Landsknechts. You can have Musketeers, you can have Conquistadors, okay, if you can see that there at the top. You can have Conquistadors, you can have ECW, you can have Aztecs fighting the Conquistadors, you can have English Civil War, Border Reavers. I'm basically going to play English Civil War, so I'm going to use my bloody miniatures to play a small action between 2 small groups of English Civil War soldiers. You can do Ottoman Empire. There are swashbucklers, lots of different periods, okay, that they've kind of given you some idea here, and it seems like it's quite a nice, simple, straightforward game to allow you to use some of your individual models with a little bit of character. So that is pretty much it. So it's a quite straightforward game. I'm quite surprised I've not seen anybody playing it. I think one of the reasons is because the periods it covers, English Civil War, Conquistadors, Ottoman Empire, that kind of thing, that they aren't really the kind of periods where you normally play very, very small skirmish games. You know, ECW is usually big battles with pike and shot, or small actions with several units in Pikeman's Lament. But I think the new Bloody Miniatures range, which I'm going to be using at the weekend, lends itself perfectly to model versus model combat. Okay, so that was just a very quick run through of the rules. Hope you enjoyed watching it, and if you want to catch up and see how it runs, how it plays, then catch me at the weekend. Probably going to be filming on Saturday or Sunday, and yeah, that's about it. So take care everybody, and I will catch up with you soon, and thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and give me a like. Cheers guys, bye.